the Glico case was a black eye on the police's reputation. One newspaper, Yomiuri, ran an editorial saying, quote, "We do not recall a case in which criminals have made such fools of the police."
In the mid-1980s, Japan was gripped by fear as an invisible enemy toyed with corporations, police, and the public alike. Calling itself the Monster with 21 Faces, the group behind the Glico-Morinaga case sent threats, poisoned products, and taunted authorities with chilling letters.
Letters from the group continued to pour in. The group showed a knack for getting the public's attention and leveraged the media to ensure their threats and crimes were widely reported.
No clear motive, no arrests, only humiliation and dread. Decades later, the mystery still refuses to die. So who were they? How did they vanish so completely? And why did one of Japan's greatest crimes end without justice for the world to witness? The bat that started it all. In March 1984, what began as an ordinary evening in the quiet city of Osaka suddenly turned into a scene straight out of a crime novel. The air was calm, homes were settled for the night, and Katsuhisa Ezaki, the respected president of Glico, one of Japan's most beloved candy companies, was doing something completely normal. He was taking a relaxing bath in his own home, unaware that his life was about to be thrown into chaos. Without warning, two masked men broke into the house. Their movements were swift and confident, as though they had planned every detail. Before Ezaki could fully understand what was happening, he was seized and taken away. In a matter of minutes, the head of a major corporation had vanished, leaving behind shock, confusion, and fear. News of the kidnapping spread rapidly, unsettling the public and shaking the business world. Soon after, Glico's executives received a message that felt almost unreal. The kidnappers demanded a ransom of 1 billion yen, along with 100 kilograms of gold. Even by today's standards, the amount was staggering, equivalent to around $10 million. The demand alone was enough to leave seasoned executives speechless. But the message did not stop there. It gave precise instructions, including a specific phone booth where the ransom was to be delivered. The level of detail suggested that this was no random crime, but a carefully planned operation. As authorities scrambled to respond, the nation watched closely. The kidnapping of such a prominent figure was rare in Japan, and the mystery surrounding it only deepened public anxiety. Yet, just when it seemed the situation could only get worse, the story took an unexpected turn. Ezaki's time in captivity was brief but terrifying. He was held in a remote warehouse, isolated and unsure of what would happen next. Then, in an astonishing display of courage and determination, he escaped. Managing to break free on his own, he fled the building and wandered until he came across two railway workers who had no idea who he was or what he had endured. With their help, Ezaki finally reached safety. His return should have brought relief and closure, but instead, it raised even more questions. Who were the kidnappers? How had they planned the crime so carefully, yet failed to keep their hostage? Despite intense investigations, no clear answers emerged. The criminals seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving behind nothing but fear and unanswered questions. But the story was far from over. Rather than retreating, the unknown group made a move that shocked the entire country. They threatened to poison Glico's products, the very sweets enjoyed by children and families across Japan. Candy, once a symbol of joy and comfort, suddenly became a source of fear. Store shelves were viewed with suspicion, and parents hesitated before buying treats they had trusted for years. Japan's attention turned sharply toward Glico, not out of blame, but out of concern. How could something so familiar and harmless become dangerous overnight? Was the attack only restricted to these? Let's delve further into the details of the nationwide mystery that followed: Morinaga, ransom, and the elusive monster. As the weeks passed, the mystery deepened and spread like a shadow across Japan. What began with one company soon grew far larger. Other well-known brands, including Marudai and Fujiya, found themselves pulled into the same frightening game. Letters arrived, demands were made, and threats followed a familiar rhythm. Each move by the monster with 21 faces seemed carefully planned, almost rehearsed, as if the group was performing a script they knew by heart. This repeated pattern both fascinated and terrified the nation. People followed every update closely, while the police raced from one lead to another, always arriving just a moment too late. No matter how hard the authorities tried, the monster stayed hidden, always appearing smarter, faster, and one step ahead. Fear slowly settled into everyday life. Shoppers examined store shelves with suspicion. Parents warned their children to be careful with sweets. Companies tightened security, yet nothing seemed enough. The monster did not strike wildly or carelessly. Instead, each action felt deliberate, as though the true goal was not destruction but control, proving how easily fear could be spread without ever showing a face. The most intense moment in the entire saga came with Morinaga, a major rival to Glico and an important name in the food industry. In October 1984, the unthinkable happened. Police discovered real products that had been tampered with, confirming that the threats were no longer empty words. Panic followed quickly. Stores across the country were forced to pull items from their shelves, and the government responded with extraordinary measures. Tens of thousands of officers were deployed to watch over shops, warehouses, and delivery routes. Never before had such a massive operation been launched to protect everyday snacks and candies. Yet even with this overwhelming show of force, the monster slipped away once again. No arrests were made. No clear trail remained. It was as if the group had dissolved into thin air, leaving behind only fear, confusion, and disbelief. The public was left wondering how such a large-scale operation could end without answers. By early 1985, hope briefly returned when police focused on a man named Manabu Miyazaki. He bore a resemblance to the mysterious, fox-eyed man seen during a ransom attempt, and for a moment it seemed the puzzle might finally come together. Investigators worked carefully, checking his movements and background, but in the end, solid alibis cleared him of involvement. Once again, the case collapsed into silence, and the trail went cold. The pressure surrounding the investigation was immense. The public demanded results, the media watched every move, and the police carried the heavy burden of national expectation. Tragically, the strain proved too much for Superintendent Shoji Yamamoto, a senior officer deeply involved in the case. His death shocked the country and served as a painful reminder that this mystery had real human costs, not only for victims and companies, but also for those trying to solve it. Gradually, the monster with 21 faces disappeared from headlines. The letters stopped, the threats ended, and just like that, one of the most unsettling crimes in modern Japanese history came to an abrupt and unsatisfying close. No final message was sent. No explanation was given. What remains are questions that still echo decades later. What did the monster truly want? Why create fear without pushing it to irreversible harm? Was it a display of intelligence, a challenge to authority, or simply a cruel game built on deception and power? To this day, no one knows who was behind the mask or where they went. Like the fictional creature that inspired their name, the monster with 21 faces vanished into the background of ordinary life, possibly blending in unnoticed. All that remains is the mystery itself, lingering in memory, continuing to fascinate, disturb, and haunt all who hear the story. Did the atrocities stop there? Is there more to the case? What was the next move? Let's dive into the details of the monster's rise to negative fame. Letters, clues, and the rise of a monster. What happened next shocked the entire nation. Letters began arriving in waves, not just a few, but more than 100 of them. They were sent to the police, the media, and the companies involved. Instead of fear-filled confessions or demands, the letters carried a strange tone. They mocked the investigators, teased them with half-truths, and offered clever but confusing clues that led nowhere. Some letters openly laughed at the police for failing to make arrests. Others read like riddles, daring authorities to catch up. What should have been a serious criminal investigation slowly turned into a dramatic public spectacle. These messages were not written in a dull or threatening way. They were playful, dramatic, and sharp, filled with humor that felt unsettling given the danger involved. Reading them felt less like reading police evidence and more like flipping through the pages of a mystery novel. The writers seemed to enjoy the attention. They controlled the story, releasing information only when they wanted, always staying one step ahead. With each new letter, the public became more curious, and the police grew more frustrated. The group behind the letters gave themselves a name that only deepened the mystery: the Monster with 21 Faces. The name was inspired by a well-known Japanese story about a shape-shifting villain who could appear as anyone and disappear just as easily. By choosing this name, the group sent a clear message. They could be anyone: a neighbor, a coworker, a stranger in the crowd. No single face could be trusted. Fear quietly settled into everyday life. As weeks passed, the monster did not fade away. Instead, their reach expanded. In October 1984, a new warning surfaced. This time, another major candy company, Morinaga, was targeted. Letters claimed that some sweets had been tampered with and were dangerous to eat. Soon after, marked candy packages were found sitting calmly on store shelves across Japan, labeled clearly as unsafe. Panic could have erupted, but surprisingly, it did not. People paid attention to the warnings. Parents checked the candy carefully. Shops removed products. Because of this caution, no one was harmed. Even so, the boldness of the act stunned the country. The monster had proven they could move freely, enter stores, and leave dangerous items behind without being stopped. The police searched desperately for leads. Then, at last, something concrete appeared. Security cameras captured footage of a man placing items on store shelves. He became known as Video Man, but hope quickly faded. The footage was grainy and unclear. His face was hidden. His identity remained a mystery. He could have been anyone. The confusion only deepened when phone calls linked to the group were analyzed. The voices were strange and inconsistent. Sometimes the caller sounded like a woman, other times like a child. This raised troubling questions. Was this truly one person, a group, or a carefully planned act meant to confuse and mislead? Every detail seemed designed to blur the truth. By now, the monster with 21 faces had done more than threaten companies. They had captured the nation's imagination. Fear mixed with fascination. People followed every update closely, wondering who was behind the masks and voices. The monster remained invisible, powerful, and unpredictable, leaving behind one haunting question that lingered in every mind. Were they hiding in plain sight, watching as the world tried and failed to uncover their true face? But how much did the monster's activity spread across Japan? Who were his targets? Let's dig further into the details of the monster's pattern of operation. A puzzle that defied resolution. Over the following year, the mysterious group, known as the Monster, slowly widened its shadow across Japan's candy industry. What began as a disturbing incident grew into a calculated campaign that touched more than 30 major food companies. One by one, familiar names found themselves drawn into a strange game of fear and imagination. And yet, despite the growing tension, something unusual remained true throughout the ordeal. The monster never actually collected a single ransom. Warnings were issued again and again, sometimes in the form of letters, sometimes through carefully staged threats. But the group was cautious, almost disciplined. They avoided face-to-face encounters and stayed far from anything that could expose them. Instead, they mastered the art of being everywhere and nowhere at once. Their presence lingered like a rumor you could never fully confirm, a whisper that followed factories, offices, and boardrooms without ever revealing a clear source. What made the monster even more unsettling was their tone. Their letters were not just threats. they were performances. Written with sharp wit and playful arrogance, they openly mocked the police and the companies chasing them. Mistakes made by investigators were pointed out with teasing precision, as if the monster were watching every move from a front row seat. Each message reinforced the same image. This was not a careless criminal group, but one that was clever, theatrical, and deeply aware of the power of words. Authorities responded with massive force. Tens of thousands of police officers were assigned to the case, and hundreds of thousands of tips poured in from the public. Surveillance increased, security tightened, and fear crept into everyday routines. Candy shelves were checked and rechecked. Parents grew cautious. What had once been symbols of joy and childhood comfort began to carry an invisible weight of anxiety. Then, just as suddenly as they had risen, the monster announced they were leaving. In August 1985, a final message appeared. The group declared the end of their campaign and vanished without explanation. There was no dramatic arrest, no final confrontation, no moment of closure. They simply disappeared, leaving behind confusion, frustration, and a long list of unanswered questions. The damage, however, was real. Japan's candy industry had taken a heavy financial hit. Products were pulled from shelves, sales dropped, and consumer trust was shaken. Behind the scenes, countless workers were affected, from factory employees to delivery drivers. Even after the monster was gone, the fear they created lingered, refusing to fade quickly. Perhaps the most haunting part of the story is that the mystery was never solved. Despite the enormous investigation and the scale of the response, no one was ever officially identified. The monster slipped through every net, leaving investigators and the public to wonder who they truly were. Over the years, theories have multiplied. Some believe the monster was an insider, someone who understood the industry too well to be an outsider. Others suggest it was an act of revenge, a twisted form of justice aimed at powerful corporations. There are even those who argue the monster cared less about money and more about creativity, control, and the thrill of outsmarting authority without spilling blood. Whatever the truth may be, the monster with 21 faces remains one of Japan's most fascinating mysteries. It is a story not just about crime, but about intelligence, imagination, and the unsettling power of the unknown. A tale where no candy was poisoned, no ransom was taken, yet an entire nation was held in suspense. Decades later, the memory still lingers, proving that sometimes the most powerful weapon is not force, but mystery itself. Was anyone eventually apprehended and investigated for these atrocities? Who was investigated? Why was he handpicked? Was he found guilty? Let's find out. From prime suspect to public figure. After the release of a police identikit in January 1985, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police announced that they believed they had identified the possible culprit behind the strange and frightening Glico-Morinaga case. Their attention turned to a man named Manabu Miyazaki, who was publicly referred to only as Mr. M, or Material Witness M. From the police point of view, several details from Miyazaki's past appeared to fit the puzzle, and for a while, suspicion followed him everywhere. One major reason Miyazaki drew attention was a recorded tape from 1976 in which he voiced support for a local labor union. At the time, the union was locked in a heated dispute with Glico, one of Japan's major food companies. Investigators felt the tone and language of this recording sounded similar to the threatening messages and public statements made years later by the group calling itself the Monster with 21 Faces. This similarity raised eyebrows and encouraged detectives to look more closely at Miyazaki's background. Their interest deepened when they reviewed a series of whistleblowing incidents from 1975 to 1976 that had also been linked to him. These incidents exposed Glico to dumping starch and other industrial waste into nearby rivers and drainage systems. The reports caused public anger and embarrassment for the company. To the police, this history suggested that Miyazaki may have held a long-standing grudge against Glico. one strong enough to fuel a campaign of threats and blackmail years later. Miyazaki's name also appeared in another controversy involving Glico's internal affairs. Around the time Glico Ham merged with Glico Nutritional Foods, a union leader was forced to resign due to accounting problems. Miyazaki was suspected of playing a role in bringing those issues to light. This added to the image of him as a troublemaker who was willing to challenge powerful institutions, even at great personal risk. Personal background added yet another layer of intrigue. Miyazaki's father was known as the head of a local Yakuza group, a fact that immediately raised suspicion in a case already surrounded by crime and intimidation. On top of that, Miyazaki himself reportedly bore a strong physical resemblance to the mysterious fox-eyed man, a figure caught on security cameras and widely believed to be linked to the crimes. For months, rumors spread that Miyazaki and the fox-eyed man were one and the same. Despite endless rumors and heated guesses, the accusations against Miyazaki slowly collapsed. Investigators from the Tokyo Metropolitan Police traced his movements step by step, checked records, spoke to witnesses, and verified every claim. Their findings consistently supported his alibis. With no evidence linking him to the crimes, the police officially cleared his name. Yet this decision came too late to undo the harm already done. Long before the truth was announced, his name had spread everywhere. He became a topic of talk shows, headlines, and street conversations. Caught in the spotlight, Miyazaki was judged by public opinion, forced to live with suspicion, scrutiny, and lasting damage to his reputation worldwide. Rather than retreat from the spotlight, Miyazaki chose to face it head-on. He reinvented himself as a social commentator and later wrote a book titled Tapamono, in which he described his experiences and the impact of being wrongly suspected in one of Japan's most famous criminal cases. The police, meanwhile, continued to explore other possibilities. They believed that several Yakuza groups may have played a role in the Glico-Morinaga affair. Interestingly, the blackmail campaign ended around the same time as the Yamaichi War, a violent conflict between the Yamaguchi-gumi and the Ichiwakai crime syndicates. This timing suggested a possible connection. In addition, the Japanese National Public Safety Commission also investigated extreme left-wing and right-wing groups, leaving the case surrounded by mystery, speculation, and unanswered questions. So, what do you think about the activities of the monster with 21 faces? Could there be insiders from the government? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.